These reviews are with important voices to me, my family. Daniel, decades ago, parents discovered they could teach reading without formal lessons by simply labeling everything in their house, from curtains to chairs. This passive information saturation method revolutionized how we think about learning.
That's interesting, Pappy, and it reminds me of how children naturally absorb language through constant exposure. The research shows they learn much more effectively when information is woven into their everyday environment.
And you know what's important? This modern approach has an ancient parallel in Deuteronomy where there's a similar emphasis on surrounding people with teachings, writing commands on doorposts, binding them to hands, wearing them on foreheads. It's essentially the same principle of immersive learning.
Hmm, that's such an intriguing connection. Both approaches seem to recognize that learning happens best when it's not confined to formal instruction.
Well, what makes this even more fascinating is that the Deuteronomy passage was specifically addressing a new generation, those who hadn't experienced the events at Mount Sinai firsthand. The text tells us that everyone 20 and older from that time had died during the 40 years in the wilderness.
So, Pappy, they were essentially solving the same problem we face today. How do you effectively pass down necessary knowledge to the next generation?
Exactly. And both approaches use this comprehensive system of constant exposure. In the modern example, you have labels throughout the house creating a learning environment. In Deuteronomy, you have these physical symbols like the tefillin boxes worn on the forehead and arm and the mezuzah on the doorpost,
You know what strikes me about both methods? They seem to anticipate and encourage questions rather than just passive absorption.
right? And the response in Deuteronomy is potent. Instead of just giving rules, parents are instructed to tell the story of their people, starting with, "We were slaves in Egypt." It's this combination of historical narrative and personal meaning that makes the teaching come alive.
Pappy, that storytelling element transforms both approaches from mere instruction into something much more meaningful.
And let's consider how both methods address different learning styles, Daniel. Visual learners through text and symbols, kinesthetic learners through physical interaction, and auditory learners through verbal discussion. It's like they intuitively understood the need for multiple approaches.
That's such an essential point about multiple learning styles. How do you think this relates to modern educational methods?
Well, the timing aspect is crucial. Both methods emphasize constant exposure throughout the day. The biblical text talks about teaching when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, while the modern labeling system provides continuous learning opportunities.
So it's not about cramming or intensive study sessions, but rather creating an environment where learning happens naturally over time.
Exactly. And both approaches emphasize community involvement. The modern labeling system typically involves the whole family, while the biblical instructions were meant to be practiced in the context of family and community life. It's learning that happens in a relationship with others.
That communal aspect seems to enhance the effectiveness of both methods.
Looking at these parallels highlights some timeless principles about effective teaching and learning. Make it visible, make it constant, make it meaningful, and make it relational. Whether we're talking about ancient spiritual instruction or modern literacy development, these core principles seem to hold.
And Pappy, it makes you wonder what other ancient wisdom might apply to our modern educational challenges.
You know, Daniel, these approaches also show us something important about human nature. We learn best when the learning is integrated into our daily lives rather than separated from it. It's about creating an environment where growth and understanding happen naturally, almost effortlessly,